Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel. So I said I was gonna do it. Pat McGrath Mothership 5 Bronze Seduction eyeshadow palette and Jackie Aina Anastasia Beverly Hills collaboration. We're gonna pin up the swatches next to each other, and I'm gonna tell you if Jackie Aina's palette is actually a dupe of the Mothership 5 palette. So if you're interested, stay tuned. I'm gonna start with the colors that look very similar, and there are some colors that look very similar to me, and of course some of them are different. There's more eyeshadows in Jackie's palette. In Pat McGrath's eyeshadow palette you get 10 colors for $124. In Jackie Aina's palette you get 14 colors for $45, and they are both absolutely gorgeous palettes. I love them. I just got Pat McGrath's palette. This is my first Pat McGrath palette, but Jackie Aina's palette, which is my first Anastasia Beverly Hills palette, is my favorite eyeshadow palette right now. With that being said, I have not used very much of the Pat McGrath, but I have definitely used every single shade of the Jackie Aina palette. I love it so much. It's bomb, y'all. Like, if you don't have it, go get it. It's $45 and it's limited edition, so get it now before it's too late. Buy it. For every shade that is in the Pat McGrath palette, I find something very similar that's in the Jackie Aina palette. And when you think about it, why wouldn't Jackie Aina model her palette after someone as great as Pat McGrath, and who is also her friend? So kudos to you, Jackie. You're smart, and you're also the bomb because you brought the options of a very expensive palette and made them affordable for the rest of us. So I'm gonna start with the colors that are the most obvious, like Wigglies. Let's just go ahead and pin them up. So Wigglies in Jackie Aina's palette is this gorgeous red here, and here's the swatch of it. And now I'm gonna swatch the red in the Pat McGrath palette, which is the Blitz Flame, and that is that right next to it. So these are the two shades, very similar shades, almost nearly identical. I have Pat McGrath on my eyes right now, but I'm telling you guys that these are pretty much the same shade. The next one I want to try is this VR Fire Opal in Pat McGrath's palette. It's like this greenish shift here, and it reminds me a lot of Sponsored in Jackie Aina's palette, which is definitely different, but I want to swatch them next to each other just so we can see, in fact, how similar they are. So I'm taking Pat McGrath's color right here, swatch right there, that's the swatch. And now I'm going to take Sponsored from Jackie's palette and just right down there. So they are definitely different. What I can tell you just looking at them side by side, Pat McGrath's color is a little bit more green. It definitely has more flecks of like glitter in it, and Jackie's color is a little bit more of like a foil shade, a foil metallic. Not as boom in your face as the Pat McGrath color is, but still very pretty. Jackie's shade seems like it has a little bit more gold in it, and Pat McGrath has definitely like in your face, blinding light, meteor across the sky, like green flash. Like, it's beautiful. Two other shades that look just alike, but let's see if they are in fact. Both appear white in the palette. Pat McGrath's is called Astral Luna Gold, and Jackie's is called Trust Issues. I actually really love the name that Jackie chose for that. So I'm swatching the seemingly white shade of Pat McGrath's palette, and it comes out like gold. And now I'm gonna swatch the white shade in Jackie's palette called Trust Issues, and you can see that they are very actually similar. I thought they were going to be two completely different shades, but no, Jackie's is gold as well. Again, it's the same kind of like with the green, with the last duochrome we just tried. Pat McGrath's is more blinding gold, glitter flecks, and Jackie's is like more of a foil metallic, still gold, but not as blinding and less glitter. They are both so gorgeous together, and what I can tell you is I'll definitely be trying a makeup look with these two shades together and the last two shades together, because Jackie's would look so beautiful all over the lid with Pat McGrath is like that pop of flare right up the center with like a halo look. Oh my gosh, that would be so pretty. So yeah, very similar colors. Now I'm looking at this beautiful rose golden type of shade. It's actually called Rose Gold 005 in Pat McGrath's palette. When I look at Jackie's palette, she has the color Zam that seems very similar. So let's swatch that. See what we get. It's so pretty. Okay, now I'm taking Zam in Jackie's palette. And again, very, very similar. Wow. Okay, so these though are actually a little more different than the last two shades that we swatched. Although they're both in the rose gold family, Pat McGrath's is a little more pink and Jackie's is a little bit more copper. Again, Pat has a little bit more glitter flecks in hers. That's more bam in your face. Such a beautiful rose gold color. And Jackie's is more of like a metallic foil rose gold, definitely, but with more of a copper shade when you compare it to the Pat McGrath. Still very, very beautiful, both of them. And copper and rose gold are actually two of my favorite metallics. I love them all day, every day. So I can't go wrong with having both of these palettes because bomb. Now I want to get into this matte. In the Pat McGrath palette, it is called Disobedient. Very smooth, and it's like a dark brown, and it may not even show up. Oh, it shows up. Okay, so it's actually a few shades darker than my skin tone. And then in Jackie's palette, we're gonna go with Credit. I think that's the closest brown to that shade. Yes, it actually looks like an exact match. And Jackie's is a little bit more gray, and Pat's brown is round. Any ideas? Like, they both look amazingly good. Actually, Credit in Jackie's palette is one of my favorite colors to wear. I wear it in my outer V all of the time. And if you want an even deeper brown than Credit, then Disobedient in the Pat McGrath Brown Seduction palette is definitely deeper than Credit. Jackie's brown is a little bit lighter than Pat McGrath. Next, I'm gonna try this golden shade in Pat's palette. It's actually called Bronze Blaze, and it is very beautiful. Wow, that is a bronzy gold. In Jackie's palette, I'm going to say that Dola's is probably the closest to that shade. So let's try that. So Jackie's is definitely more golden, and Pat McGrath's is definitely more bronzy. Very, very beautiful shades right next to one another. And actually, this is more of a foil metallic in Pat's. Based off of the last few swatches, you would think it had more glitter. It's more of a foil, just like Jackie's shade is as well. But Jackie's is definitely more gold. Very beautiful colors. Moving right along in the palette, this lighter brown is called Entrapment. It is a matte. In Jackie's palette, I'm gonna say this is a closer shade out of the remaining matte browns, which is Ginger and Edges. The closer of the two is probably going to be Ginger. Edges is a little more red, so I'm just gonna grab Ginger. Jackie's shade is definitely lighter than the Pat McGrath Entrapment shade. Let me also try grabbing Edges in Jackie's palette, which is more of an orangey shade and probably, yeah. The Pat McGrath shade is here. You can barely see it because it's like my exact skin tone match. It is not showing up. You might be able to see it if I, yeah, it's a little less washed out there. You can see it right there, but it's really like the match of my skin tone. There's really no match in Jackie's palette for that particular shade, but it's nice to know that you have more brown options if you have both palettes. So now we have Glitzy Pleasure right here in the Pat McGrath palette. Let's see where we are. So this one is a very, very light gold. It's very, very subtle. Let's see what we have in Jackie's palette that might be close. The Soleil color. Ooh, okay, so Soleil is blinding. It is such a blinding color. Let me try to swipe Lituation in Jackie's palette to see if that might be close to the Pat McGrath. I don't think that it is, but let's just try it. So there you have it. Actually, Lituation is a bit closer to that shade, but it's definitely more purple. The Pat McGrath shade, Glitzy Pleasure, it's very subtle. I don't even know how to describe it. Little bit of golden in it, pretty, but definitely not a match in Jackie's palette. Then we have the Skin Show Divine Glow in Pat McGrath's palette. So this one is definitely more like Soleil in Jackie's palette. But again, Soleil is more rose golden, but they're very similar. Matter of fact, on the camera, you can't even really see the difference, but there definitely is a difference. In the Skin Show Divine Glow and Pat's palette is definitely more chalky, whitish golden. So definitely have some white in there. Very, very pretty. For the Pat McGrath palette, the last color is the Extreme. I'm going to take this purple. It's the last of the 3 mattes that are in this palette. Let's swatch that one. It is a very, very dark purple, and I can already tell you just from using Jackie's palette all the time, there's not a purple this dark in her palette, but I am gonna go ahead and swatch the dark matte purple that is in her palette called a Big Wig. Very vibrant purple. Definitely not as dark as the Pat McGrath one, but it is the purple that is in her palette. And you can see how very different they are, but still very similar and would probably create a very bomb eye look together. So we've now swatched all 10 shades in the Pat McGrath palette. We have seen the similarities of the Jackie Aina palette, and I didn't swatch all of the shades in this palette because I just wanted to see which ones were similar to Pat McGrath. So that is it for pinning all of the colors up one-on-one next to each other. My overall assessment is that if you love this palette but you can't afford it, a great alternative is the Jackie Aina palette and Anastasia Beverly Hills palette. This is a great palette anyway, guys. Go ahead and get it. I highly recommend it. But I really do like the Bronze Seduction palette. It is my second favorite of the Pat McGrath palettes that I've seen. The Rose palette that she just released being my first. That is it for this video, guys. I hope it was helpful for you. If so, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. If you are new here, my name is Brittany. I do makeup and lifestyle here on my channel. So if you're interested, go ahead and hit the subscribe button below, and I hope to see you in the next video. But until then, be your own kind of beautiful.
Any ideas?